Rome was one invention away from ruling Earth forever. The empire that built the Colosseum in just 8 years could have launched rockets by 1500 AD. Steam power would have transformed legions into unstoppable industrial war machines, eliminating the Dark Ages entirely. The Romans had everything they needed except one thing, and that mistake might have saved humanity from its greatest nightmare. This is the untold story of Rome that could have ruled the stars. Let's get started. Why didn't Rome industrialize? Close your eyes and imagine walking through Rome at its peak. Towering marble columns, sprawling roads stretching across continents, aqueducts carrying fresh water to bustling cities. This was a civilization that built the Colosseum in just 8 years, engineered roads that still exist today, and constructed harbors capable of handling the largest trade networks the ancient world had ever seen. Rome had the brains, the resources, and the ambition. So why didn't it take the next step? Why didn't Rome give birth to the Industrial Revolution nearly 2,000 years early? The answer lies in a single sound: the shuffle of thousands of sandaled feet, the clatter of cartwheels, the crack of a whip. Rome didn't need machines. It had people, millions of them. Slaves fueled the empire's economy, doing everything from plowing fields to mining precious metals. Why invest in steam power when human labor was cheap and endlessly replaceable? Imagine a Roman blacksmith watching a simple water mill automate hammering. He wouldn't see a technological breakthrough. He'd see a threat to his business, to his workforce, to the very foundation of Roman society. But it wasn't just about labor. Rome, for all its engineering brilliance, lacked something crucial: the scientific method. Unlike later civilizations that would experiment, hypothesize, and refine their inventions, Rome viewed science as a tool for immediate practical needs, not an avenue for discovery. Consider the Aeolipile, a primitive steam engine designed by Hero of Alexandria. It spun when heated, hinting at a world where steam could replace muscle. But to the Romans, it was nothing more than an entertaining party trick, a curiosity rather than a revolution. But what if things had gone differently? What if Rome had broken free from these limitations? How could Rome have industrialized? History is filled with moments where everything could have changed in an instant. Now, imagine a Rome forced to adapt, not by choice, but by necessity. Picture this. A devastating plague sweeps through the empire, not unlike the Black Death that ravaged medieval Europe centuries later. Streets once filled with merchants and artisans now echo with silence. The sprawling slave markets of Rome lie abandoned, their human merchandise reduced to a fraction of what it once was. Labor is no longer cheap, it's scarce. Suddenly, for the first time in its history, Rome faces an existential crisis. How can an empire built on human toil survive when there are no hands left to work? This is the moment that could have changed everything. Just as the Black Death forced Europe to embrace technology, leading to the mechanization of industries and the rise of the working class, Rome too might have sought alternatives. Enter steam power. The Romans already had the knowledge. Hero of Alexandria's Aeolipile, a primitive steam engine, had been dismissed as a mere curiosity. But now, with no other choice, what if an enterprising Roman engineer saw its potential? What if, instead of dying in obscurity, Hero's invention became the blueprint for a new kind of industry? Imagine factories powered by early steam engines, ironworks churning out weapons at an unprecedented scale, Roman chariots replaced by steam-powered transport moving legions at lightning speed. Of course, technology alone wasn't enough. Rome needed a leader, a visionary willing to shatter tradition. What if Marcus Aurelius, instead of merely contemplating philosophy, had pushed for mechanization? What if Augustus, the architect of Rome's golden age, had seen industry as the path to eternal dominance? With the right catalyst, a labor crisis, a spark of innovation, a ruler with foresight, Rome's fate could have diverged. And if it had, the world would never have been the same. Now, let's step into that alternate reality and explore the mind-blowing changes that could have followed. The Industrial Roman Empire. The streets of Rome rumble, not with the footsteps of marching legions, but with the churning of steam-powered chariots. Plumes of smoke rise above the eternal city, twisting into the sky like the breath of Vulcan himself. The clatter of steel, the hiss of steam, the rhythmic pounding of industrial hammers. This is no longer the Rome of poets and philosophers. This is Rome reborn, a mechanized colossus. Imagine a vast network of steam-powered locomotives threading through the empire like veins, pumping life into its farthest reaches. Instead of months, goods now travel in days. Grain from Egypt, silk from the East, iron from Britannia, all flowing seamlessly into Rome's industrial heart. What once relied on the slow crawl of ox carts and galleys is now a symphony of iron and fire, the empire moving at a pace the ancient world could never have dreamed of. But Rome's true strength was never just in trade, it was in war. Now, picture the legions, not armed with swords and shields, but with rifled cannons and steam-powered war machines. The Navy, no longer at the mercy of the wind, sails into battle with ironclad warships centuries ahead of their time. Enemies of Rome wouldn't stand a chance. Greece, Persia, Germania, none could have resisted the might of an empire that had mastered mechanized warfare before the world even knew what it was. And with power comes consequence. Gone are the serene Roman forums, replaced by looming factories and soot-covered tenements. The Tiber River runs black with industrial waste. The air is thick, choking. A price paid for progress. The Rome of marble and gold is gone. In its place, a city of steel and smoke. This industrialized Rome wouldn't just dominate the ancient world, it would reshape history itself. And with such power, Rome would have shaped the world in ways we can barely imagine. Global impact. The world we know would be unrecognizable. No medieval castles, no Viking raids, no Renaissance, because the Dark Ages never happened. Instead of collapsing under the weight of corruption and barbarian invasions, Rome would have roared into the future, its industrial might keeping the empire alive for centuries. Europe, rather than fragmenting into feudal kingdoms, would have remained unified under a mechanized Rome. Steam-powered Roman legions would have crushed any uprising, ensuring that the empire didn't just survive, it thrived. And with this technological head start, what happens when Rome turns its eyes beyond its borders? The New World, discovered not by Columbus in 1492, but by Roman explorers 1,000 years earlier. Imagine Roman ironclads crossing the Atlantic, steamships making first contact with the civilizations of the Americas. The Aztecs and the Incas wouldn't face Spanish conquistadors with muskets, but Roman engineers with steam-powered machines. Would Rome have conquered, traded, integrated these new lands into its growing empire? The course of history itself would be rewritten. And what about the march of science? The Industrial Revolution in our timeline led to revolutions in medicine, electricity, and even space travel. If Rome had industrialized in the 2nd century instead of the 18th, could we have walked on the moon in the 1500s? Would the Renaissance have happened in the 5th century instead of the 15th, giving humanity a 1,000-year head start on progress? But with Rome's shift from conquest to industry, what would happen to its culture? An empire built on innovation rather than war, would democracy have evolved faster? Would the ideals of the Republic have returned, strengthening freedom and philosophy? Or would Rome's obsession with power and efficiency have led to something far darker, a world where industry ruled over individual rights? But what if Rome's industrial revolution wasn't its salvation, but its downfall? The downside. At first, an industrial Rome would seem unstoppable, but beneath the surface, cracks would begin to form. Cracks that could shatter the empire faster than any barbarian invasion ever could. Imagine the sprawling forests of Gaul and Germania, once untouched and vast, now stripped bare for lumber, fuel, and expansion. The Tiber River, once the lifeline of Rome, choked with soot and waste, its waters undrinkable. The Roman countryside, once fertile and lush, turned barren by relentless mining and industrialization. We saw this in our own history. London in the 1800s, suffocating under coal smoke, children working 16-hour shifts in factories. Now picture that happening 1,000 years earlier, only this time it's Rome, and the empire is crumbling under its own progress. Then, there's the human cost. Slavery, the backbone of Rome's economy, would become obsolete. Machines would replace laborers, And suddenly, millions of people would be left without purpose. Would Rome's elite willingly grant them freedom? Or would these displaced masses rise in rebellion, tearing the empire apart from within? The Industrial Revolution in our own timeline led to social upheaval, workers' rights movements, revolutions, and economic collapse. Now, imagine that. In an empire ruled by emperors and legions, where unrest is met with an iron fist. And then there's war. An industrial Rome wouldn't just build, it would arm itself like never before. Ironclad legions, mechanized war machines, and factories producing weapons at an unprecedented scale. But with power comes paranoia. The empire would need more resources, more iron, more coal, more land. The result? Endless wars of expansion, not just against barbarian tribes, but against itself, city against city, faction against faction. Could the empire even survive its own hunger for dominance? Britain's Industrial Revolution led to global empires, but also brutal wars and deep inequality. Could an industrial Rome have avoided the same fate? Or would its ambition have consumed it, transforming it from the greatest empire in history into its own worst enemy? So, in the end, would an industrial Rome be a utopia or a ticking time bomb? Conclusion. History is a fragile thread. Pull it too hard, and everything unravels. If Rome had industrialized, the world as we know it wouldn't exist. No Renaissance, no Dark Ages, no Columbus crossing the Atlantic. Imagine a timeline where Rome's iron grip never loosened, where steam-powered legions marched across continents, their banners blackened by coal smoke. But would this be a golden age or a nightmare? The very soul of Rome, once built on honor and conquest, would have been consumed by machines and industry. Would the human spirit thrive under such a regime, or be crushed beneath it? Perhaps Rome would have reached the stars centuries before us. Or perhaps, like Icarus, it would have soared too close to the sun, only to plummet into darkness, its legacy buried under the weight of its own ambition. That's all for today. If you have enjoyed this video, do hit that like button and subscribe for more content like this.